strong plan reflects the yearly plan. That's the curriculum that has been set already. We also talked about breaking down the lesson plan into to step by steps and into units.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to cover that you want to talk about? Did anything confuse you, or did anything not make sense, or do you have any questions about? Because that's what this time is for. Also,
Okay.
anything that we covered that you didn't think that you didn't think made sense, or you didn't quite agree with, because you are teaching. Anything that I said on Thursday that you kind of want to challenge or you didn't understand?
I understood everything, but I was a bit confused when I was rewriting my notes, like creating my own notes this time. I was a bit confused where we had the difference between standard and curriculum.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, great.
I'm not too sure if standard is how we teach or if that's the curriculum. That was
Yeah,
why I was a bit
yeah. So
confused.
a lot of people confuse standards and curriculum. So standards are what we teach, what you teach. It's the what. Okay. Just always remember when you hear the word standards, standards are what you teach. And to some extent is to how proficient you can go into proficiency of what you teach, right? That we want students to to grasp it at a certain proficiency level. But standards, in a nutshell and very simply, is what we teach. That's it. The what. Okay. These are the standards. These are what we call standards. What we teach. This, and when I say what we teach, I'm also talking about the skill and ultimately what we want the student or what we believe the student should become. That's also a part of the standards. Okay. All right. And when I say we, I'm talking about society as a collective. So in Nigeria or in Thailand or in Kenya or in Brazil, right? Each one of those departments of education or ministries of education, they have um, they they should take in consideration, and I'm pretty sure they do, take in consideration what they ultimately want that generation of learners to become. So they are looking forward to a certain type of citizen at a certain point based on the needs of the country or the needs of the society. That makes sense? So
Yes,
these are where the standards come from. So for instance, the standards that when I was in the sixth grade are going to be different than the standards when you're in the sixth grade because there's an age gap between you and I, right? So what the world needed, what your country needed. Uh, let's say we were the same nationality. I'm older than you, so so the needs of the society were different when I was in the uh, in the
Yeah.
in the 80s, right? So when you were in the sixth grade, the society needed something else.
Yeah.
So that's why we have generations, right? Each generation is a little bit different. You have to, like my parents were the boomers. They call the generation the boomer generation. I'm a Gen Xer. Then you have the millennials and the Zers. Now you have the alphas. The reason why, and that's another thing, teachers need to understand the generations because each generations are sparked by basically the needs of society, things that are going on in society at that time, and how we cultivate those group of people, normally in a 10 to 15 year time time span. All right. And so you would notice that, especially nowadays, that alphas all around the world are acting the same because of the internet, because of
Mm-hmm.
social media.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when I was, again, when I was in the sixth grade, uh, a sixth grader in America would be a lot different than a sixth grader in Kenya or a sixth grader in Japan, because there wasn't a lot of common links other than our just us being human, but there weren't a lot of societal or cultural links. Now, because of social media, a lot of the kids are very similar because they're watching the same movies, they're watching the same influencers, right? They're watching the same cartoons now. Like kids are watching every kid is watching Peppa Pig, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
Peppa Pig is on YouTube, you know. And so unless the country blocks Peppa Pig, a lot of kids around the world are watching Peppa Pig, right? So the needs of different generations change, and innovation is really responsible for that and what goes on. Now the kids who are alphas now, they're going to be, technology is going to really influence them. But the other things that are going to influence them is like this war in Gaza, the Palestinian deal, because they're being raised up in this right now. This part of the genocide, they're going to be influenced by what's going on in Sudan. They're going to be influenced by immigration, right? Because these are major issues that are going to really affect how we teach them, right? Even LGBTQ in a lot of countries, right? Right, they're being affected by that, right? Because so the way we teach, and I wanted to talk about that today if we have time, how qualitative research really affects us, and how being a teacher you have to have a standard. In fact, yeah, let me get into that really, really quick. I'm only going to spend about 3 minutes on this, and then I'll let Sarah uh, give me her feedback. But no, let me just stick with the proper protocol. So to answer your question, standards are what, okay? Is what we teach, and a lot affects the standards. Typically, the government, businesses uh, are responsible for issuing standards, right? Their commissions, their government agencies get together, people get together and say these are the things that these kids need to know, or these group of learners need to know. Okay.
Okay.
Curriculum is how we teach those things. All right. It's important to know that everything that you do in a school day and beyond is curriculum. From the class schedules to what they eat for lunch to the textbook they use to if you use whiteboards or blackboards to how you teach cooperative learning, support, everything is curriculum. Okay. This is a big issue, and I mentioned this on Thursday because in some places, especially because of ESL actually has really screwed up teaching and learning. It has really damaged teaching and learning. All right. Because for the last 40 years, right, we've had uh, these people who mainly from all over the world now, but we had these people who weren't really trained in teaching go out and teach English, and they have affected the teaching and learning community globally, that we have strayed away from best practices a lot, and we fall into what I call isomorphism. Right? Everybody isomorphism means the same form, that everybody does the same thing. So what has spread globally now is everybody thinks the textbook is curriculum. So you go textbook, textbook. What textbook are you using? All right. Most textbooks are very similar. If it's coming from a reputable, and most textbook companies come from a reputable uh, publishing house, right? That that's going to apply research and all those things, curriculum design, all those things that are required to develop a textbook. All right. So you could take a Cambridge book, you could take a Harvard, McGraw Hill book, right? And they're going to be pretty much the same. There's going to be obviously McGraw Hill is American, Cambridge is British. Obviously, there's going to be British English in one and American and others and spelling things like that. But the application of how the book is applied is pretty much going to be the same. All right. Textbooks are not curriculum. They're just resources within the curriculum. That's all they are. So if the big problem is a lot of schools rely heavily on textbooks, mainly because they're not doing well, because of mainly because of ESL, English teaching, right? Because for so long we've had these people who are not professional teachers, right? And a lot of 80% of ESL instructors are not professional teachers, right?
Yeah.
So so they never went through the rigor of going through education program, and it's very rigorous. To go through a school of education is extremely rigorous. There's a lot of things you have to do, right? So you get these people who say, "Well, I think I want to teach in Saudi Arabia. I think I want to teach in Japan," right? And they go out and they take a little TESOL course or they take a CELTA course and they feel empowered. And some of them don't even have college degrees. They only have high school diplomas. Some, you'd be surprised. Some even don't even have high school diplomas. And they go out and they have to rely on the textbook because they don't know how to teach. They don't know anything about methodology. So then they start flipping pages. So over the years, especially if you learn English by somebody like that, you're going to think, well, that's the proper way to teach, right? And it's not. In America, I remember one of my fond memories as a school, as a school juvenile, adolescent in school rather, is giving the textbook in the beginning of the year, right? So we would get these textbooks at the beginning of the year for each subject, and we got two books for each subject. One was the class set, and one was the take home set. So you took one book home, and I always remember the first, second day of school, you got all these books that you got to take home, and I would slide them under my bed because by the time I got to the sixth or seventh grade, I knew the teacher was never going to use the book. And sure enough, she never assigned homework out of the textbook. She hardly used the book in class. Why? Because most of my teachers, in fact, 95% of my teachers when I was uh, in school were professional teachers. They already had their strategy and what they want to do. The only reason they issued the textbook is because the principal told them to. Right? The math teacher already knew how to teach math. Right? The math teacher didn't need a textbook to teach a kid how to math. He already knew how to teach math. Right? The English teacher already, and the English teacher when I started teaching in August of 2000, my boss, Miss Alice Taylor, she was my department chair, my boss. She said, all right, these are the standards. These are the standards for the state of Maryland. Look at the standards, figure out what you got it, she even told me what you want to teach from the standards, right? Make sure that the students at the end of your course, students can read better and they can write better, right? Just also all you need as an English teacher. I taught ninth grade English. Make sure they can read better and write better. And we at that time we had a test called the Maryland Functional Reading and Writing Test. So that was make sure they passed that test because that test was required to graduate high school, and then make sure they pass the writing test, right? Whatever you need to do to get them to read better and write better, do it, and you don't have to rely on the textbook. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story. One time, so I was a new teacher, and I, I was really excited, right? I was really, really excited. So there was a nonprofit in my community. There was a guy. He had this organization called the Book Thing, and it was in the basement of this house. And what he would do is he would get you could donate used books, right? And you can go in there and you can take as many books as you want. Oh yeah, lock that for me, Ray. Lock them in there for me, Ray. You could take as many books as you wanted. So one day, one Saturday morning, I got up. Um, me and my fiance at the time, she was a school teacher too, and we got up and said, "Let's go down to the book thing to see what they got for our kids." And they had this whole classroom set. You like the cage? They had the whole classroom set of grammar books. And I come from Baltimore, Maryland, which is a black city. It's predominantly African American city. So, I wanted my kids to be better at grammar, right? So I said, "Oh, can I get the grammar book?" He said, "Yeah, take the whole book." I was so proud of myself. I had these brand new grammar books. They were about that thick. I was so proud of myself because at that time, the big thing was to have an in-class library. Every teacher should have an in-class library. So I said, "This is going to be books for my in-class library." So, so I got the books. I get the kids to work out of the books, right? Remind you, I think this is my first year teacher. I'm so happy, right? Now I was in the military before I was a teacher.
Okay.
So like my classroom management was like my kids were quiet, you know what I mean? So the Miss Taylor used to bring down other new teachers because she was so impressed by how was able to keep the students engaged and quiet, right? So she would sometimes bring down people and say, "He's a new teacher. Look how he can control his students," right? So she came down one day and she saw the kids teaching out of she saw the kids in the book and me teaching out of the grammar book. And she said, "Come in, Mr. Roberts." They used to call me Captain Roberts because I taught in this the military program in the school. "Come here, Captain Roberts." And I came, I said, "How you doing, Miss Taylor?" She said, "Oh, I see the kids are in this, they reading from this book. Where that book come from?" I said, Miss Taylor, "I got this book from the book thing. It's a grammar book. Oh, it's so awesome." She said, "Mr. Roberts, I tell you what I want you to do. When they finish with that book, all right, when they leave today, I want you to throw that book in the trash can. Just throw it in the dumpster, okay? You don't need no book to teach these kids. You teach them, not the book." And that was my first lesson. That happened to me maybe October of 2000, and she was absolutely right. She was absolutely right. When I went on and got advanced degrees, and number one, she was one of the reasons why I continued in teaching because she just knew how to teach, and back then teachers really knew how to teach. So, but I told that as an antidote to this idea that the textbook is God, the king. Textbook is not a curriculum. Am I saying not to use a textbook at all? No, I'm not saying not to use a textbook. What I am saying is do not heavily rely on the textbook. You got to remember, put it this way. This is what I normally tell people. These books are written by someone who doesn't know your students. So some 40-year-old woman in Oklahoma, right? She's in Oklahoma. 40-year-old white woman. She's Christian, right? Protestant, and she is writing the textbook. Nice lady, but she doesn't know anything about Muhammad and Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. She doesn't even know anything about Islam. She doesn't know anything about Arabic culture, right? She doesn't know. She doesn't know. And and the reality is, she's not really writing the book for Muhammad. She's writing the book for an American kid in an American classroom. And what we do a lot is we put so much pride in the book in these textbooks that are not even designed for our students. They're not even designed. They weren't even written with our students in mind. So imagine for a second that you hate, you absolutely hate fantasy books, right? But you love murder mysteries. But every book somebody put in your face is a fantasy book. And often that's what happens with these textbooks. So when you hear, I always cringe when I hear schools brag about, oh, we have Cambridge, or we have McGraw Hill, or we have Horton. Oh, this is our curriculum. It's like when somebody takes their nails and scratch it against the blackboard. It irks me, right? Because again, these could be wonderful books for students for Cambridge students. I mean, for students in another situation, not for students, not necessarily for students in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And that's why almost every single time you hear somebody say what here in Saudi, oh, unit, there's something in unit 3 that's not really appropriate for Saudi culture or Arabic culture. Don't do page 27 in unit 7. Like, so that tells you what? If there are pages in the textbook where you feel uncomfortable because you think it's inappropriate for your students, you probably need to dismiss that whole book, because that tells you that that book is not designed for your group of students. Because if it was designed for your group of students, every page in that book should be consumed or could be consumed. Make sense? Like you don't watch Elmo, right? Or Peppa Pig or whatever the latest cartoon out, right? And from the beginning of the cartoon to the end of the cartoon, it's appropriate for kids, right? It's appropriate for kids. There's not like a part of the cartoon, or there shouldn't be anyway. You never know nowadays. There's never a part of the cartoon that's inappropriate for kids, because the cartoon was what? Made for kids, right? So you're not going to see something that is made for an adult in a kid's cartoon, or you shouldn't anyway. And that's the same thing with a textbook. So um, I'm saying all that to say is, throughout the world, um, some countries have been accustomed to seeing the curriculum as a textbook. I just experienced that Thursday, by the way. I went to consult with a program, and they were bragging with me about the platform. Oh, this platform is amazing, right? It's amazing. The kids, everybody else is using this one. Everybody loves this platform. It does this and it does that. And you can click this and you can click that, and videos come up. All right. Well, what does the teacher have to do? Because if that's the case, you don't even need this program. Just give the students the platform and just have them run the platform. You don't even need a teacher. You don't even need a program. They can just sell it, right? So um, curriculum is how, right? It's the how. It's how you teach. Everything involves curriculum, from the class schedule to your lesson planning, to how many breaks they take throughout the day, to the homework you give them, to the field trips you go on, right? Everything is curriculum, right? Um, so that's curriculum. Okay. I know that was a long answer to a very short question. Anything else you want to cover, Blessing? No? Sarah,
Yeah, I'm good.
all right. Sarah, you
Thank
want to give me what you want to cover?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Uh, Now I think we covered a lot when it comes to the lesson plan because what you explain about the lesson plan, we also maybe sometimes find some mistakes in the yearly curriculum or the the yearly academic plan, and we correct it where we can because I found some mistakes in last year uh, yearly plan
Yeah. And
where we
yeah, you want to
yes
always scope and sequence. And so we're not perfect. There's always going to be mistakes.
yes
And so that's why we scope and sequence. And I
yes
think we talked about that last week. Scope and sequencing, setting benchmarks, making sure that it's working. That's why the formative assessments are extremely important. The formative assessments are extremely important because they allow us to know that we're on the right track. And just keep in mind, I think I said this last week, assessments are not for students. They're for us to determine that we are doing the right thing in the classroom. So assessments are not, especially formative assessments, okay? And even summative assessments, right? But especially formative assessments. Formative assessments allow us to make immediate changes. And that's where the scope and sequencing, the benchmarking, which is a form of an assessment. So we can be in the right plan. Because again, everything doesn't go as planned. All right. And let me say this about the lesson plan also. Just because you lesson plan doesn't mean you wrote this great plan. Doesn't mean you have to follow the plan to the T. All right. When we lesson, we react to things as they take place in real time. Right. Teaching and learning is a human experience. So you come up with this great plan. You spend all night creating this plan. But then when you get in the class, something may happen where you completely deviate from the plan. That's okay. That's a part of the human experience. My mentor used to tell me good teachers know what to do and when to do it. That's what makes you a good teacher, is what you know what to do and when to do it. And so there's a lot of little pieces involved in that. Even if you get a degree and a teaching license and you got a master's in education, it's not until you step in that classroom and you had several years of dealing with several different types of students and several different type of coworkers and principals and this and that you begin to what I call marinate your teaching. You ever made a salad or so? You ever made a dish and it tastes better the next day than it did the first day? Right. That's our teaching. The more we teach, the better we get at it, the better it tastes. Right. So I just wanted to say that yes, I said before, 90% of what we do as educators is planning, but but we also got to understand that um, when appropriate, you can deviate from the plan, 1% to 100%, because you have to go about what is on at that moment. Remember, we want to deal with the students' want, needs, and expectations. Going back to our talks about the brain, we said that the information goes to the RAS, it goes to the amygdala. We want to get the information to the frontal lobe, and this goes back to the lesson planning. You have to be kind and friendly. You have to smile. Right? Let me say this, and this is regardless of whether they're small kids or they're adults. When you get in that lesson plan, when you get in that walk into that classroom, regardless of how bad your day is going, when those students come, you have to. How's everybody? Is everybody wonderful? Is everything? It's such a beautiful day. They need that because if
Yeah.
if they see you like this, and don't get me wrong, sometimes I'm cranky. I am not a morning person. I am not a morning person. So when you give me a morning class, it's some bad news because I got to pump myself up. Because if the students see you like this, all right, we're going to learn about the present continuous today. If they see that energy from you, their RES is saying, no, this is not safe. This is not cool. And you're not going to be effective. But when they see you, hey guys, what's going on? It's a wonderful day. I see y'all got a lot of sleep today. I hope you got a lot of sleep. You doing good, all right? You doing good, Muhammad? Doing good, Talal? You feeling good? It puts them in a mood where now they're more willing to be receptive. And I don't care who you are, where you are. I don't care if it's university. I don't care what scenario it is in. The instructor has to be a motivator. Remember, you're not a teacher. What you have in your classroom are teachers. You're the facilitator. You're the motivator, right? You're the guide. You're the knowledgeable person. If we're talking about Vygotsky, right? If you have 18 sixth graders in your class, you have 18 sixth grade teachers. You're not the teacher. They're going to teach themselves. They're going to decide whether that information goes into the short-term memory, working memory, or long-term memory. They make that decision. You don't make that decision. Okay? You don't make that decision. The learner makes that decision. The learner decides where that information goes into in their long-term storage, or whether it even gets into their long-term storage. Okay. All right. Let's just review SMART. So, Blessing, can you tell me what the S is in SMART? I think you're muted. You're muted.
Sorry. S is specific.
Specific. And what do we
Yeah.
mean by specific?
Making your point clear and direct.
Right. So each learning point is specific.
Yeah.
All right. It's students will be able to underline. Students will be able to underline the subject in a sentence. You see how specific that is? Students will be able to underline the subject in a sentence. Students will be able to circle the verb in the sentence. Students will be able to edit all of the punctuation errors in a paragraph. Very specific. Specific. Okay. All right. The next letter is M. Sarah, what's M?
Measurable
What
or
does measurable?
quantitative things.
Say that again.
Quantitative,
Quantitative. Measurable is quantitative. Meaning what?
yes. You have to measure the information you are going to execute.
So it's things that we can see as the teacher.
Yeah.
All right. Because we remember when we're teaching, we need continuous confirmation that we're on the right track. Simply saying, do you understand? Does anyone understand? And they're all going to go, what? Yeah, we understand. We understand. Do you understand? That's not That's not what the British call concept checking. All right. All right. That's not concept checking. All right. You have to, all right, see, hear, right? So you can what? Adjust your teaching accordingly. That's a part of the formative assessments. That's a formative. You seeing and looking is your formative assessment. So if you tell the students, all right, on your papers, I need you to underline the verb. And you could do what? You can look around and see what whether students are underlining the verb. And if not enough students are underlining the verb, you can do what? Go back and reteach. Give them another example, right? Go back, get them on their feet, have them come to the board, figure out what's going on so you can correct any confusion. Okay. All right. A. What is A, Blessing?
Achievable. It should
Achievable.
be, yeah, it should be something that is realistic and appropriate for their age.
So achievable is something that, yeah, appropriate for their age, something they can do. They can reasonably be able to do. All right. And we're not going to ask third graders to write a 5-page essay. We're not going to ask them to do that. We're not going to ask them to synthesize Moby Dick. We're not going to ask fifth graders to do that. It's not. I'm not saying a fifth grader couldn't do it, but the average fifth grader couldn't even read Moby Dick and understand it, right? So we're gonna whatever we do in our class, it should be something that they should be able to do. And we use I gave you a formula for that. Do you remember the formula I gave you?
I plus 1.
I plus 1. I plus 1 is the formula. Take something they already know and you add one more bit of information to it. All right. So if you take something they already know, the RES and the amygdala loves that. This is something I already know. Oh, you gave me more? I didn't know that. Okay, now I know. I have some more information. All right. It makes it interesting and it's more likely that it's going to be stored in their frontal lobe because you connected it to their current reality or their current knowledge base. Okay. Then we have R, sir.
Relevant. We have to getting to know what is important for the student.
Right. What's in it for them? Is it relevant for them to know this bit of information? All right. Do they really need to know that? Is it necessary? I see a lot of times teachers will emphasize things that the teacher likes or it was relevant for the teacher. But the teacher is 55 years old and it's not relevant for a bunch of 14-year-olds. All right. So we got to make sure that whatever we're teaching is actually relevant. Okay. Um, I got a commentary on that really quickly. This is a big problem, actually. The aura is a big problem, and it's a huge problem, right? Actually, globally, because teachers, it's called inert knowledge. It's called inert knowledge. INERT, inert knowledge. And inert knowledge is when we teach things that the students really don't need to know. That knowledge is inert, meaning it's not doing anything for them. And believe it or not, a lot of the things in the textbook are inert. That's why we can't go by the textbook, right? Um, and because we are not learner profiling, we're not dealing with the students' wants, needs, and expectations. So you really need to dig deep as an educator and decide uh, if the students really need to know that. And you have to be, I tell you, as an educator, you have to be brave. You have to be absolutely brave because you may have a principal, you may have an academic director, a department chair who says, "Oh, they need to know this, right? I want you to teach out of this book." And you said, "Well, a lot of stuff in that book, the students really don't need to know." No, just teach out of the book. You think you're better than the book? Yes. Yes. I'm better than the book. I know more than the book. Yes, I do. Because the book doesn't know my students. I'm a human being. I know my students. Right. So, but, because, but a lot of people don't do that because we don't want to argue with our boss. We don't want to argue with our supervisor. But teaching, you have to be your students' champion. You have to be their champion. There's a famous, he's well known in the ESL community, Dr. Camara DeVelu, and he has something called the post method condition. And in the post method condition, there's three P's that he says the teachers must be concerned with when we're teaching them a language, but it applies to even in anything in regards to teaching and learning. The first P is particularity. What Dr. Camilo Verlo says in particularity is that you have particular students in your class that are unique to that time and moment, to that class, right? You will never see another student or another group of students like you have right in front of you now, right? You'll never see another group. And you guys been teaching. Have you had a class that has been absolutely the same class from year to year? No, each class is different. I mean, wildly different. So that confirms Camara DeVelu's particularity. So you need to deal with their particular wants, needs, and expectations. So tell me how a standard textbook does that. Tell me how a standard textbook does that, right? That's particularity. Then he had practicality. It's the next P. Practicality. And he says, look, you must do what's best for your students, right? You got to do what's best for your students. You got to be practical. He also says that there is no best method. Now, a lot of times we go into professional developments, or school makes us come in on a Saturday to hear a PD or stay after school and have somebody come in. Dr. Ray comes in, somebody like me comes in, and well, you got to do this, and your lesson plan and smart, and right? And this is the best way for the students, and it's garbage, nonsense. That Prabhu said, "There's no best method. There's no best method. There's many ways." Dr. Diane Loss Freeman in her chaos theory, there's many ways to do things. There's many different ways to do that. You have to be iterative. Teaching and learning is iterative. It's chaotic. There's not one way to do something. There's not one way to teach something. Yes, we have best practices, but even those best practices change from generation to generation, from time to time. The big problem in education is something called fashion statements, and that's not. I didn't make that up. I actually heard this in a TESOL conference years ago. Yeah, I gave a talk on this, and I agree with them. That every couple of years, people say, "Oh, this is the best way to do this," right? And then that dies out. And then 3 years, like, "Oh, this is the best way to do this." They're called fashion statements. They go in and out of things. Go in and out of fashion. Like you heard, emotional intelligence. Everybody was talking about emotional intelligence 10 years ago. Emotional intelligence, right? And then from that, you have Gardner's emotional intelligence theory and multiple intelligences, and all these things go in and out of fashion. Some of these things are not even scientifically grounded in research. This is somebody saying, "Oh, that sounds good," and they get on, especially with social media now. You can get on a TikTok, or you can get on a Instagram and start spouting, "I am Dr. Ray Roberts, and I'm going to tell you that you must do this for your students." may have some good points, may not be completely wrong, but understand, excuse me, excuse me, but understand there's no best method. Practicality says you must do what works for your students. Understanding what works for them today may not be what works for them tomorrow. Okay? And definitely may not work for the next group of students that you have. All right. But to my point that I was initially making, the last P is possibility. The last P is possibility. And what Camara de Velo says is that when you're an educator, you have to be brave to unlock all the all the possibilities for your students. Because there are going to be a lot of people. Most teachers, most administrators are grounded in their own way. Most teachers are teacher based. They're behaviorists, right? This is the way we're going to do it. We're going to do it this way, my way, or the highway, right? A lot of principals like that. A lot of teachers like that, right? A lot of leaders, educational leaders like that, academic directors. Because they they look at teaching and learning inward. It's about them. It's about how they feel. And as I said before, I don't know, it was yesterday or the Thursday or Wednesday or Tuesday. I don't care about how you feel as a teacher. I care less. As a principal, I care less about how teachers feel regarding teaching and learning. Care less. What I'm concerned with is what you think. I'm concerned with what teachers think, not how teachers feel. Because one of the worst things that could happen is when educators start educating based on their emotions. You start to cross lines. You start to cross lines you shouldn't cross, and then you move away from what's best for the students. You move away from what's best for the students. I care about the data. What do you think? Because when it's what you think, it's going to be what you think is based on data. It's going to be based on your observations. It's going to be based on quantitative facts. It's going to be based on qualitative experiences. So I care most about what teachers think because we can quantify that. We can qualify that. Right? We can make data-driven decisions, which is best for our learners, not our feelings, not our emotions. Often, I hear people often say, which is wrong, oh, we want a motherly like spirit in the classroom. We want somebody that can be like a good mother. No, no, you don't. That child already has a mother. They got grandparents, they got aunts and aunties. And even if they don't have a mother or a father or whoever, it's not your responsibility as an educator. Your responsibility as an educator is to prepare them for the challenges they're going to face as adults. And that's what all us educators do is contribute to them being able to solve problems as adults. And if you teach adults, that's your main job, is to help adults solve I don't know what's wrong with me. Solve their own problems. Going back to what? Being self-determined, self-regulated, self-efficient. That's our job. Help move them up Bloom's taxonomy so they can evaluate. helping them solve problems. That's our job. Our job is not. It frustrates me when I hear people say, "Well, I got to be the mommy, the daddy, the social worker, the psychiatrist." No, see, that's the problem. That's why teaching. That's why teaching and learning is is problematic in 2025 because today's teachers want to do more than what they get paid for. You get paid to help that young person become the best person they could be in the future. That's what you get paid for. You don't get paid to be their mommy. You don't get paid to be their daddy. You don't get paid to be their psychiatrist, their psychologist, their social worker, their ombudsman. You don't get paid for that. There are other people who have those responsibilities and are good at that. Let the person's mother be their mother. Let their father be their father. Right? Right? What we can do and what we should do is advocate for our learners. So when we have a academic director or a department chair or a principal who's a tyrant, you don't be afraid of them. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean you're going to be disrespectful to them. You should be very respectful. You should be respectful to everyone. However, you should always advocate for the wants, needs, and expectations of your learners. A lot of us can't do that because we never learn a profile from the first start. That's why I will repeatedly say in the beginning of every school year, the first 4 weeks must be dedicated only to getting to know your students. But again, most schools won't do that because they're thinking, oh, we got pacing, we got to get through the book, we got to get through the book, we got to get through the book. The parents want us to get through the book. We got to get through the book, the book, the book, the book, the book, the book, the book. Give them an exam. It's midterm. We got to give them a midterm. Every time I turn around, I hear second and third graders taking midterms. What is going on? Why are we testing young kids so much? Why are we testing so much in general? Because we have a very static way of teaching. Teaching is active. It's not static. Okay? All right. So the possibilities are very important. That as an educator, we have to champion our learners' causes because there's a lot of people, and I'm not saying that these people are intent. Their intent, their heart's in the right place. Their heart truly is in the right place. And if you come from a very teacher-based uh, experience, then you're going to probably be teacher-based yourself because that's all you have seen. But we know that the highest possibility of greatest return is when we are student centered. We know that's the highest possibility because we know ultimately they are their own teachers. All right. All right. What I want to do now is I want to show you a lesson plan. We're going to talk about lesson planning. Um, the individual lesson plan. Now, remember, the individual lesson plan works in concert with the yearly plan. So everything must work in concert with one another. The yearly plan with the unit plan. Sometimes we have semester plans. Semester plans are typically a combination of unit plans. So I'm going to say the yearly plan, the semester plan, and then you have the unit plan rather, the yearly plan, unit plan, and then you have your uh, daily lesson plan. All right. Now in Saudi Arabia, they call it the weekly plan, where you map. There's nothing wrong with that map. And weekly plans are nothing more than daily lesson plans. There's nothing wrong with the weekly plan. Okay. All right. But I like to break it down into yearly plan, unit plans, daily lesson plans. They all have to work in concept with one another. That's why you scope and sequence to make sure that everything is aligned with one another. Okay. So I'm going to give you an example of an ESL, and I think I put this in your, I believe I put this in your Google Classroom. Is the daily lesson plan? I'm going to we'll share it on the screen now. All right, and we're going to look at this. I'm going to break this lesson plan down for you. Now, is there any one set way to write a lesson plan? No, there's no one set way. Your school may have their own lesson plan, but there's no perfect lesson plan. There could be bad ones, I guess. But as long as you have this key information in your lesson plan, this essential information in your lesson plan, that's all you really need to worry about. The template, because you got to remember, it's really for you. The lesson plan is really for you, right? So as long as you understand it, and I guess um, if you're not in school that day, the lesson plan could also be for whoever's going to take your class, right? So it should be understandable, but it's mainly for you. So as long as you understand it, now, if you don't understand your own lesson plan, then obviously that's problematic, all right? But make sure the lesson plan works for you, or if your school mandates a lesson plan, uh, I wouldn't hesitate to make sure that this key information is on or has a set mandated template. All right. So the first thing that we want to think about is the terminal objective. You guys see that in my screen? You guys see the lesson plan? Okay. Now, okay, the first thing that we want to think about is the terminal objective. And the terminal objective is aligned with that backwards mapping that we talked about on Wednesday. Remember, we talked about, was that Wednesday or Thursday? We talked about how they make supermarkets, how they design supermarkets, right? So the terminal objective allows you to keep in mind the end goal, the last day of school. What do you want the student to look like at the last day of school? What should that student be able to do by the last day of school? All right. How have how have they changed? Let me learn English. How have they changed since the first day of school? How have they changed since the first day of school? Is there any change? If the student is the exact same on day one and day 180 as they were in day one, there's something going on. That school is not being effective. There should be a measurable difference in at least the intellectual ability of the student, and hopefully the social aspect, the outward aspect of the student too. Right? Because remember, our job is not just to help develop. We don't create anything. Develop their knowledge. Their knowledge is to develop the whole person. We talked about that on the first day. Whole person who can solve problems and be what? A benefit to society. That's what we're concerned with. Are they going to be a benefit of society, or are they going to be a burden on society? We want them to be a benefit to society, right? We want the next Einstein and the next astronaut and the next great thinkers, right? We don't want them to be burdens. So a part of our job as educators is to develop the whole person, So that's why a lot of times we have to take holistic approaches. So we look at the terminal objective. The terminal objective. Now, the terminal objective does not have to be smart. Okay? It doesn't necessarily have to be smart, especially when it's holistic. All right. But it's you write it down or you have it in mind. You don't have to write it down. We write it here as an ideal lesson plan. But as long as you keep it in mind, this is I am doing this because this will help my student or my students become this ideal thing that we're shooting for in the standards. That makes sense? Now, if what I am doing now does not contribute to the ideal student that I want on day 180 at the end of the school year, I should not be doing it. That makes sense? So if what I'm doing now does not contribute to the ideal student by day 180 or whatever the days that elapse by the end of the school year, I shouldn't be doing it. All right. So that helps keep us in check. So maybe there's something in the textbook that does not support the terminal objective. You don't do it. All right. All right. Enabling objectives. Now, the enabling objectives, these have to be smart. All right. These are going to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely. Okay. Oh, we didn't do timely, by the way. We forgot the T. I'll do timely. T is making sure whatever we do, we could do it in the allotted time for that lesson. Makes sense, right? All right. So the enabling objectives, they have to be smart. So in this one, it says greet each other and exchange names comfortably. Is that specific? Yes. Is that measurable? Can you see or hear that they've greeted each other? Yes. Is it achievable? Is something attainable? Is something they can do? Yes. Is it relevant? Yes, it's relevant to learning a language, being able to greet. And is it timely? Can they do it in a timely fashion? Yeah. So that's a smart objective. And I'm not going to do that with everyone, but ask and answer, um, substitute, fill, participate, write. What do we notice there? Write, participate, fill, substitute, ask, greet. What do we notice? Each objective begins with a what? Each objective begins with a what? Greet, ask, substitute, fill, participate, write. Each objective begins with a verb, doesn't it?
Well,
It
okay, yes,
begins with a verb, right? So
yes, yes.
a smart objective should always begin with a verb. Now, again, I don't think you were here for this blessing, but I think we dealt with this on day one. In the original Bloom's taxonomy, they were nouns. Okay. Bloom's students revised his taxonomy and they did two things. They changed the nouns to verbs, which is a good thing. And then they switched evaluation because Dr. Bloom's had evaluation on top of synthesis, evaluation synthesis. And what they did was they made synthesis evaluation. Now, in the business world and people like me, I believe they were wrong in that. I believe that evaluation is a higher order thinking skill than synthesis. The reason why I know that evaluation is a higher order thinking skill than synthesis is because you can create something, but if you stop there, you stop the chain of innovation. All right, it's not until you're able to evaluate and how and attempt to improve on what you created. We do this in the writing process. This is actually a part of the writing process. All right, after you submit what you have written or you publish what you've written, what do you go back and do? You go back and evaluate it, and then you write again. You rewrite or you revise what you have already published. And we know that because we can look at our books, right? We can look at books. You have the first edition, second edition, third edition. Somebody wrote a whole book and then they decided they need to do a different editions, right? Because that's ultimately a part of the writing process is rewriting. It's never perfect, right? There's always something that we can do better. So evaluation is definitely a higher skill than uh, synthesis. I'll give you another business example of this. Um, I'm going to give you an example that you can probably understand better. Well, let's look at BlackBerry. Remember, there was a time where BlackBerry was on top. They were the king of the hills, right? I remember when I first came to Saudi, everyone had a BlackBerry and they had another phone, second phone. Kids were walking around with two phones, or people in general, BlackBerry and maybe an iPhone or BlackBerry and another Android, right? BlackBerry is king of the hill, but they got so comfortable that they stopped innovating. They stopped innovating. They stopped evaluating, and what happened? They lost market share, and now they've lost market share, and now nobody buys a BlackBerry. They've tried to make several comebacks, but it's too late now. You know, Apple and Samsung have taken the market share. All right. Another example is in America, we had a I don't know if you guys remember, there was a rentals where you could rent videos, video rental stores. Okay. So in America, we had a very popular video renting store called Blockbuster.
Yes.
Blockbuster was extremely a part of American culture. Blockbuster was a part of American culture. It was, uh, when you dated a girl or a guy, and you was at the next step in your relationship because you were like, oh, you want to go to Blockbuster and get a video? Right? That was like the next step in your relationship. So hey, can I get your number? Yeah, I get Oh, let's go out for coffee. All right, let's go out for dinner. All right. So the next step would be, hey, let's get a video and come over to my house and watch a video. Right? That was like the next step in the relationship. And you would go to Blockbuster, right? And then you guys get married, right? Have kids, and then what happens? Then the family goes to Blockbuster. The kids get a movie, and then mom and dad gets a movie when the kids go to sleep. You know, it's a part of Americana. And then this thing called the internet comes out, where everybody has the internet. Now, before that, there was this other company. They were sending the DVDs to your house by mail. By mail. That company was called Netflix. So before Netflix was online, they would actually send you the DVD, and then you would return the DVD back by mail. All right. Not a lot of people used it because not a lot of people wanted to send it back and all this stuff. But then the internet came out, and Blockbuster was like, you know what? We're the king of the hills. Everybody loves coming into our stores and getting videos and getting popcorn. They love that experience. We're not changing what we do. And then when DSL came out and you could start to stream, Blockbuster did not take that opportunity to say, hey, look, let's start a streaming service, because they didn't evaluate the situation that was going on at the time, because they were in what? Synthesis mode. Oh, that's just put more new stores. We'll just put more stores up. We'll just put more stores up. We'll put more stores up. We'll put more stores up. We'll do the Blockbuster Awards, right? Blockbuster Awards were a big thing. Oh, we'll do the so create, 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 create. Synthesis, 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 but not evaluation. This company called Netflix, they also were creating, sending out DVDs. But they said, hold on a thing. The market is now possibly changed because of streaming. So they started streaming. Blockbuster didn't stream. 2025, you don't even know what Blockbuster is. And Netflix is one of the biggest streaming companies. And not only are they a streaming company now they actually produce movies. So now they are content creators. So now big time actors would rather do a Netflix movie than a Warner Brothers movie, because Netflix is continuously evaluating the situation. And the moment they stop evaluating is the moment somebody else will come and take their market share. So that is evidence that evaluation is a higher ordered skill than synthesis. Right? And there's many examples in the marketplace of that, but the Blockbuster example is the best one because it's relatively recent. All right. All right. So now so we want to make sure that everything, all these skills um, actually support the terminal objective or whatever you want the student to be. All right, now look at this lesson plan. To meet that timely, remember, everything needs to be timely. So I have a time period. It's going to take me 5 minutes to do the greeting, 10 minutes to do the warmer. All right, let's stop for a second and talk about warmers. Do not ever, 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 forever not do a warmer. I don't care if the warmer is 30 seconds or right, it could be 3 minutes, but always do a warmer. Now, what is a warmer? A warmer is an activity that takes your students out of survival mode and puts them into learning mode. It helps relieve and relaxes the RAS. Remember the security guard, the reticular activating system, the first bit of where information goes to, right? So, for example, let's say you teach 6th grade math, and you teach it at 11 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, they have 6th grade English. And then on this particular day, everybody had a bad day in English, right? The teacher was upset. This is a bad day. That class, that 10 o'clock English class was a nightmare. Teacher yelling, students yelling, everybody's yelling, right? So now you come in the class, you're the 11 o'clock math teacher for this class. So you walk in Saudi, a lot of times the teacher walks into the class, right? So you walk into that class and they are still reeling from the nonsense that happened at 10 o'clock. And then you go right into your lesson. What happens? They're still in crazy mode. They're still in anger mode. They're still in sad mode. They still reeling from what happened in the 10 o'clock class. Right? Maybe the teacher passed out the test from the day before and everybody failed. Right? Everybody's sad. Then you come in there, how you doing, class? All right, turn your books to page 20. You think they want to turn their books to page 20? No. So we do a warmer to get them out of what we call survival mode. Okay. Warmers. Warmers. Always do a warmer. Warmers should be short. I say they shouldn't last more than 6 or 7 minutes. Definitely no more than 10 minutes. The shorter the warmer, the better. Here's the key. Warmers must be easy. They must be easy, 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 easy. It should be something that every student should be able to do or can do easily. All right. And the warmer, you don't have to tell a joke. You don't have to do a backflip. You don't have to do all that. What you need to do is give them something easy to do to build their confidence. Okay. So they start off their class with a victory. So if they don't understand anything else in that lesson, they got the warmer right. They got one victory. So you're giving them one victory at least for that day. It's important. You skip the warmer and you go, man, that class was bad today. It's so off. You go, you know what? I didn't do a warmer. I didn't do a warmer. All right. Well, I wasn't smiling. This is what we call reflective teaching, by the way. Thinking about your teaching. If you have the ability, some schools will not let you do this because of privacy or whatever. But if you have the ability, try to film yourself as a teacher. Film your lessons, at least 1 or 2 lessons, and then go back and watch yourself. You can, I did that. I said that. I look like that. Oh, I don't like that. Oh, 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 oh. Now I understand what my students see. Right? If you don't film yourself and see it for yourself, because you got to see it from, it's like these horror movies they have now, what they call them, found footage. Like you see what the serial killer sees, right? Or you see sometimes you see what the victim sees, right? It scares you. Ooh, it's scary. It's creepy. All right. If you film yourself, now you're seeing the class from the student's perspective, and allow you to make important adjustments. Again, sometimes schools don't want you to do that for whatever reason, but if you have the ability to do that, it's a good teacher training. It's a good personal teacher training. All right. So that's the warmer. Warmer must be easy, short. The warmer satisfies the RAAS, the reticular activating system. It makes the reticular activating system happy. Okay. It makes the reticular activating system happy. Okay. All right. So that's your warmer. All right. Now I want to talk about the teacher paradigm, and I think I'm going to stop there. I'm going to talk about the teacher paradigm. I may ask you guys to give me an example of a warmer, but let's go over the elements of the lesson plan first. So we have the warmer, always do a warmer. Now, when you write a lesson plan, I want you to write it from right to left. Meaning, start with what the students do first. So anytime you write a lesson plan, think about what the students are going to do. This is part of backwards mapping. Think about what the students are going to do. And then, you see where it says teacher does? Then ask yourself, what do I need to do in order to get the student to do it? It allows you to be more comprehensive in your plan, more detailed in your plan. So this is, I want the students to do this. I want the students to um, watch the teacher model the blackboard on a blackboard. All right. And then what do I need to do that? What do I need to do get the teachers, the students to do that? All right. And that's what you would write here. Okay. Ask other students about the theme. All right. So you start with what the students will do, and then you then write what you need to do. So maybe I need to collect the crayons or distribute the crayons or do this or do that. Okay. And this allows you to be very comprehensive in what you need to do and not forget anything. Because a lot of times when you write a sloppy lesson plan that's not very detailed, what ends up happening is you get in the lesson and you go, oh, I needed to make copies. Now it's too late. Oh, I should have did this. Or I should have sharpened the pencils. Or I should have did that, right? If you start first with what the students are going to do, and then you think about how they're going to do it, or what you need to do rather to get them to do it, then you're more likely to not miss anything or miss less things, and especially not miss the important things. All right, you see this column that says problems? These are problems that you will have that you predict that you might have in that class for that day. Okay. Now, the key with problems is these are not student problems. These are your problems. Remember, a student problem is your problem. All right. So you know you have a student who likes to talk a lot in class. That's not his problem. That's your problem. So you now, what this allows you to do is now plan for that student. Make sense? A lot of times we know we got that one student or two students or five students who talk a lot in class or do something that disrupts the class, or maybe they need extra help or whatever the case may be. And we kind of just wish it away. I hope they don't talk today. I hope they don't talk today. We know daggone why they're going to talk today. And so this allows us to be more proactive and say, okay, this is how I'm going to stop this from happening. I'm going to attempt to stop this from happening. All right. So it allows you to be proactive. Okay. So remember, these are the problems that you think you're going to have. Another thing is, suppose you're doing something with the internet, but you know in the school the internet is spotty, right? So what are you going to do about it? Now this allows you to say, well, I'm going to turn my hotspot on, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, or I'm going to move to another classroom. So it allows you to be very detailed in your response. All right. All right. The control practice of vocabulary expansion, lesson activities, reading. These are different. We're going to spend a whole day talking about these things alone, and you should be reading them about them in the smooth move in your textbook. Okay, so we're going to spend a day talk about control practice, vocabulary expansion. So I'm not going to get too much in that right now. But this is just the elements of a lesson plan. All right. So and now the last thing I want to talk about as far as the lesson plan is concerned. Remember, everything should be tied to a unit. Remember, unit is going to be yearly plan unit, daily lesson plan, right? So everything should be tied to a unit. Okay. All right. The unit is context. When you're teaching, every time you teach, it has to be based on context. Context is everything. You cannot teach without context. All right. And what do I mean by context? Well, I want you to write this down. Context is the situation the student understands. Context is the situation the student understands. Not that the teacher understands. Context is the situation the students understand. Okay? So when you're creating a unit, you're creating units, and typically we create the units after we know the students what their wants, needs, and expectations are. A lot of times what most of us do is go by the units in the textbook, right? Textbooks are broken down into units, themes, right? Um, you can use those, but it would be better if you use themes that you know your students can relate to. Sometimes the themes in the textbook are great, and sometimes they're not so much. But it's better if you use the themes that you know they relate to. All right. So the context is always the situation the students understand. Right. So what are some situations that people understand? I'll give you an example, and then you tell me some situations. You give me one. All right. I'll give you being hungry. You think learners understand what it means to be hungry? Yes or no? Is that could be context. You can use that as a teaching context. All right. Because most learners, most people understand what it means to be hungry. Maybe not starving. There's a difference between hungry and starving, right? But that most people understand what it means to feel hungry. All right, Sarah, you give me one. Give me a context. Give me a context, Sarah.
Let me think about their favorite thing to do or hobby.
Hmm?
Their favorite thing to do.
No, just give me one. Give me something off the top of your head. Give me an idea. What's the context that most people understand? Give me one off the top of your head. I said being hungry. Most people understand how it feels to be hungry. Give me one. All right, Blessed, you have one?
Wanting to use the restroom.
Wanting to use the restroom. Having to empty our bladder. We all know that, right? We all know that, right? Having to go to the bathroom. I got to go to the bathroom. I got to use the restroom, right? That's something that we all understand. All right, Sarah, you got one?
No.
Oh, come on, Sarah. I'm gonna give you another one. I'm gonna give you one. Being angry. Being angry. Do we all know what it feels like to be angry? I don't think there's a person on this earth that hasn't experienced the feeling of anger. All right. What? Give me another one. Now you give me one, Sarah. I gave you two. You got three now.
Oh, I have no idea. Oh,
What about being tired? You think people know what it means to be tired? Come on,
yes.
give me one, Sarah. Give me one.
Tired, sleepy.
Sleepy, bored, right?
Yeah.
Um, what about frustrated? Hmm? What about love? And
Exactly. Love or being sad.
sadness,
Mm.
right? Um, happiness, right? Um, right. So these are contexts. Every time you teach, every time you teach, every lesson, it should be based on a theme, and themes are based on context. Remember, context is the situation that your students will understand. All right. And I like to give it to them in a way, in a language they understand too. So I know now they like the word Riz, like that's the word they use now. All right, isn't that the word they use? Riz. Isn't that? I think that's what the kids are saying now. The teenagers, Riz. And from what I understand, Riz means what is Riz, Ray? What's Riz? Is a compliment, or yeah, it's a compliment, or it's when you're trying to impress somebody from the opposite sex. That's the Riz. You're trying to impress them, right? So I'll say, uh, you know, uh, Michael is risen on Mary, right? The kids, they like that. Maybe I'm using it in the wrong way, but they understand that, and and we know it. I know it because I don't know what we said. Hitting on. I guess we would say hitting on, but they say the Riz now, or sus, right? Sus is something what something something suspicious, right? Or creepy. I guess creepy, weirdo,
What
right?
about insultive, being rude?
Being rude, right? Being rude, feel feeling insulted, the feeling of being insulted, right? So these are, especially when you're teaching a language, but again, even when you're not teaching a language, you can also. So let's talk about. Let's say this: you were teaching math, and the context could be you're you're in the grocery store and you're looking for items that are on sale. So the context could be on sale. And in this lesson, we're learning about what? Percentages. Huh? Because a lot of times when something's on sale, it's what? 30% off, 10% off, 50% off, up to 90% off. They always get you with that one, don't they? You go to, oh man, they got a sale, 90% off. But it's small, right? It's small writing. It says up to. I thought this was going to be 90% off. No, up to. This is actually 10% off, right? And then the worst thing in the store is 90% off, right? Some stupid item is 90%. All right. So we can use context for any scenario. So when you're teaching, always teach based on a theme. All right. Themes also will connect with your yearly plan. So when you're doing your yearly plan, if all of the themes are connecting, then it makes sense for the learners, and the learners will begin to follow what you're doing because every unit is a theme and every lesson plan has context that follows that theme. So that helps you do what? That helps you with your scope and sequencing. That helps you stay on track because you're going down the right rail, the right line, right? You're staying on track. So that's a great way to scope and sequence is by using themes. All right. And the themes that the student remember, context is the situation your students understand. Sometimes uh you have a teacher and they will give context based on their experiences. And then the student goes, what? And not understand. You like, you guys don't know this, right? So if I gave you an American context and you guys are from Kenya, you might not get the context. So that's why we emphasize that context is the situation the student understand or students understand, not the teacher. Remember, the age difference makes you different than them. You are completely different than them. I know you think you're young, right? But to your students, you are old, right? To your students, you are ancient. To your students, you are ancient, right? And like for me, you guys look at me, and you probably call me an old man, right? I don't feel old, but you probably like that old fart, right? And then I look at other people and go, man, that guy's old. I look at a 60-year-old and go, man, he's old, right? And he looking at me going, shut up, young man, right? So always remember that age is when you, especially in teaching and learning transaction, age is a major variable. So we always do things based on the students' wants, needs, and expectation, and based on the students, what the student will understand. And remember, we talked about CIs, Sarah, comprehensible inputs. I don't know you were there for that, Blessing. Comprehensible inputs. These are part of the comprehensible inputs. Remember what we said. For this is from a concept based, come from Stephen Krashen. Comprehensible inputs are things that are what? Compelling, understandable, and compelling. That's a, so context is understandable and compelling. Okay. Every movie uses context and they use themes. Okay. That's what hooks you into the movie or the book. Okay. Or the podcast. All right. I think I want to stop there. What I want you guys to do by the end of this week, I believe I put this lesson plan in the Google Classroom. But what I would like you to do by the end of this week is write a lesson plan based on whatever you want to write about. You could be something that prepares you for your class this school year. All right. But I want you to write a lesson plan using these themes. All right. You can skip the control practice. We're going to talk about we're going to talk about the teacher paradigm tomorrow. And teacher paradigm and control practice tomorrow. And then the next day we'll talk about vocabulary expansion. And probably we'll get into listening. All right. So you could, if we don't cover whatever we don't cover, you can just skip that part. But I want to see that you can demonstrate in writing context, a terminal objective, some enabling objectives. They don't have to be 7. All right. But they could be, 3 or 4. Have a time section, a teacher does section, a student do section. Problems. Remember, these are teacher problems. All right. So any problem the student has is actually your problem. Student talks too much, behavior issues, student uses the bathroom, whatever, internet problems, whatever the case may be. You have to at least acknowledge it and and decide how you're going to uh, uh, negotiate that obstacle. All right. Remember, start with the students do. What do you want them to do? And then teacher does is what would the teacher do? What does the teacher have to do in order to get the students to do it? All right. So if you can just give me the context, terminal objective, enabling objective, time, teacher does, student do, problems, I'm cool with that. The greeting and the warmer. Okay. The greeting the greeting. Now this is for like an ESL lesson plan. In a regular classroom, just by saying, uh, asking the students how they feel today, greeting, hello. I mean, that could be 30 seconds. The warmer should be no more than 10 minutes. It could be the warmer could be 1 minute. The warmer could be 3 minutes, but it should not exceed. I like to say 6 to 7 minutes, 10 minutes tops, because you still got other things to do in your lesson. So you don't want to spend too much time. And if the warmer is easy, and it must be easy, that's a requirement of the warmer. Then you should be able to knock it out. Remember, in that warmer, so let's say you're teaching English, right? And you have a student in your class that speaks zero English, right? You want to do the warmer so at least that student get that answer right. So if he gets it right, the other students get it right because he's the student that has zero English. So warmer, easy, 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 easy. Okay. And warmer is about getting them out of survival mode. Are there any questions about anything I covered? Blessing, you had a question?
Yeah. Please, I want to understand the warmer. Does it have to be based on the day lesson, like the
No,
lesson I have to teach? Okay.
no, it does not. It does not need to be based on the lesson. Okay. It doesn't have to be based on the yesterday's lesson. All right. And it shouldn't be a drill. When I was coming up, uh, we had something called the drill. So the first thing we would do is the drill. And the drill was about what we learned yesterday, the prior day. And what we learned in research is that's not a good idea, because what happens is if I let's say I wasn't there yesterday, then I already start off the class with being defeated. I feel defeated. So I'm not starting off with a victory. I'm starting off with a loss. Or if I didn't understand yesterday's lesson, right? I start off with a loss. So we move from drill to warmer to something so easy that the student gets it right, right? So, what city do you live in? Or what? Write a picture on a board. What is this? I mean, write a circle on a board, or a triangle. What is this? It's a circle, teacher. Oh, you're so smart. You're right. That's a circle, right? And it might not have anything to do with what you're going to do for the lesson, but it's just to get them out of survival mode. All right. Good question. That's an excellent question, by the way. Excellent question. Any other questions? All right. Read your chapters wherever you are. Remember, we're going to read at least 10 to 15 pages a night. Do your journal. And if there's no other questions, we will see you tomorrow. All right. I'm going to put those links up now for you guys. All right. See you guys tomorrow.